Welcome to the Science of Tree Felling series.
In this video, we're going to be talking about personal protective equipment necessary to do tree felling, or what's commonly referred to as PPE. We're going to start at the top with our helmet. Our helmets are going to be certified by ANSI Z89 for head protection. Lots of different types, styles, and varieties out there, and we're going to go through some things that you're going to want to look for when you select a helmet. First of all, there's two types of helmets. There's a Type 1 and a Type 2. A Type 1 helmet means that the impact rating has been designed and tested for a direct impact on the top of the head, whereas a Type 2 helmet has been designed, tested, and rated for not only a top impact, but the potential for an off-center blow as well. Arguably, a Type 2 helmet is going to be safer for you, but they're a little bit more difficult to find. And just because you have a Type 1 helmet doesn't mean that it's not going to offer you off-center protection. It just hasn't been tested and rated for it. Helmets are a necessary item to protect our very valuable brains and heads from any type of impact. Also, some helmets are designed with a brim on the front. That is going to potentially help and reduce the risk if we ever have an object coming at our faces. It should and hopefully encounter our helmet first before it were to interact with our face. So some level of protection there, although they're not tested and rated for it. I have seen helmets come in handy and protect operators' faces as well. They also come in different classes. Not all helmets are created equal, and these are going to be electrical classes. So your helmet is going to be either a E, C, or G class. An E-class helmet means that that helmet has been electrically tested for 20,000 volts. That doesn't mean it's going to protect you in the case that you encounter an energized conductor, but that means that it has been tested, and you're going to find that there's no vents in E-class helmets. E-class helmets are going to be required if you are working near power wires or working for the utility company, and likely at some point in time to work near power wires. So an E-class helmet is required if you're working for the utility, but generally not in most other industries. 20,000 volts of potential protection with an E-class helmet. Then we have a C-class helmet, which is on the other end of the spectrum. C-class meaning conductive helmet. These helmets are going to have holes or vents that open and close on the helmet, and those are going to be potential locations where if energized or if electrical conductors were to contact it, it would cause electrical arcing and increase the likelihood for that electricity to jump into and through your body, which would make for a terrible day. So with a conductive helmet, the advantage of it is that you have vents so that your head can possibly remain cooler, especially if you're working in warm climates or out and about during the summer. There's a third class that I find very rarely out in the wild, and that's called a G-class helmet. A G-class or general class helmet is going to be one that's been tested and rated at 2200 volts. You will not be able to use it for the electrical industry. You'll need an E-class helmet, but really it's a hybrid and it's something in between. I don't see very many of these out in the wild, but should you come across a G-class helmet, that's what that means. We need to inspect our helmets and make sure that all of our personal protective equipment is in good working order. You should follow the manufacturer's recommendations for inspection. Look at your helmet, flex your helmet. Is it missing anything? Do all the adjusting mechanisms operate properly? And is the suspension system fully intact and operating? If there's any cracks, defects, discoloration, or damage to your helmet, again, it's going to protect your head if it's fully functional, and it's not if it's not. So make sure that you get a new helmet. Inspecting your helmet, and this is going to be a little bit controversial for anybody who's hearing this that may have stickers on their helmet. Are stickers allowed by the manufacturer? The answer is sometimes. The adhesive on the sticker could potentially degrade the plastic of your helmet, so they have to make sure that the adhesive of that sticker is in coordination and accepted by the manufacturer, so it actually doesn't degrade and damage your helmet. But I will also argue that during the inspection process, you want to be able to see as much of that helmet as humanly possible and inspect it for any defect. Again, if that helmet fails, the next thing that it's going to hit is your head. And if you have a sticker over any section of your helmet, how do you inspect that? Maybe you can flip it on the inside and you can try to inspect it on the opposite side. But in general, if you have a sticker over something, or maybe you put a sticker on it to help conceal that defect, does not mean that it's safe. So I recommend not putting any stickers on your helmet. Save your stickers for your lunchbox or somewhere else. How about helmet lifespans? How long do helmets get to exist and protect us? It depends on the manufacturer. Most of the time, manufacturers are going to set what's called a sunset date, or a date that that helmet needs to be retired. And that is based on the concept that helmets are made out of plastic or some version thereof that's going to degrade over time. And so that they're not going to guarantee that it should or could protect you from an impact based on the length of its life. Most manufacturers, except for one that I've run into, will start that sunset time frame from the date of manufacture. Now, all helmets are going to have all this information inside of them. They're going to say, as long as it's an appropriate helmet to be used, that it conforms to Z89 standards. It's going to tell you its type 1, type 2. It's going to tell you its class, E, C, or G. And there's going to be some marking on the helmet as to when it was manufactured. Sometimes it's a date that's embossed into the plastic. Sometimes it's on a sticker. Sometimes it looks like a little clock that you have to interpret that has months on the outside and a year mark on the inside with the arrow. But you're going to need to gather all this information so that you know when the manufacturer tells you to get a new helmet, because at that point in time, it's no longer going to offer the same level of protection necessary to keep your head in good working order should you receive an impact. So in general, they're 5 years. I've seen them go up as high as 10 years and as low as 3 years based on manufacturer. Like I said earlier, there's one manufacturer who actually starts the clock at date of purchase. Most of the time that isn't the case. That's a kind of an oddball. So we'll leave it at that. But do reference that little booklet of information that comes with a helmet to determine, or look online, how long your helmets are good for, and put that date in your calendar and buy yourself a new helmet when it becomes time. Also attached to my helmet, but not necessary to have attached to your helmet, is hearing protection. We only have one set of ears. And actually, the thing that we're trying to prevent is what's called noise-induced hearing loss. Noise-induced hearing loss is a damage to your inner ear hair. Once you've damaged your inner ear hair, it cannot be repaired. So noise-induced hearing loss is permanent, which makes it all the more reason to use hearing protection anytime something is loud. Now, the standard says that we have to have hearing protection anytime there's an 8-hour time-weighted average of a decibel rating of 85 or greater. The decibel scale is a logarithmic scale, which means it's not linear. The higher the number, exponentially louder that noise gets. What is 85 decibels? Super difficult to explain, but if you've ever operated a vacuum cleaner in your house, that's kind of my benchmark. That vacuum cleaner is sitting at about 85 decibels. So if you're going to encounter a noise like a chainsaw or a chipper, or I'd argue even the vacuum cleaner in your house, wear hearing protection. So if I have muffs on my helmet, they're always attached to my helmet, which I'm always wearing. And I can just pop them out and pop them down. Make sure they're fitted appropriately, and that's going to reduce the noise level entering into my ears and reduce the likelihood for damage. When I'm done, I can pop them up and just store them back out. If you have earplugs, that's fine to use too. I generally don't recommend using earplugs and muffs at the same time. That noise reduction level can cause an inability to hear things that you still need to hear. Like stand clear, or look out, or watch out for that, or I need you over here, or somebody yelling for help. You still need to be able to hear some noise. You just want to reduce that noise level. So if you're an earplug person, great. Make sure your earplugs are properly fitted. If you're a muff person, great. Make sure that your muffs are in good working order. Muffs are going to wear out over time. The foam on the inside gets kind of nasty over time. You're going to want to replace that. And the cuff and the surround that goes and creates that seal against your ear, that's also going to be damaged. It's called a hygiene kit. They can be purchased for all major manufacturers and replace that, and they will need replacement with time, so make sure you consider that. And that's hearing protection. Eye protection. All eye protection is only eye protection if it has a stamp on it that says Z87. Z87 is this testing standard for both eye and face protection, and that you should not confuse the two. Eye protection protects your eyes. It'll have a Z87 stamp on it. If you can no longer read the Z87 stamp, no longer eye protection. If your lenses are scratched and you're having trouble seeing through it, throw them away, get a new pair. That's going to increase the likelihood of an incident if you can't see well. And it has to have that stamp. So your glasses may look super cool, but they're not safety glasses. They haven't been tested and rated unless they have that Z87 stamp in them. Now, where I need to talk about a little bit of differentiation here, especially for loggers, is that if you have a face shield, something that comes down, you'll also see that same Z87 stamp on it. That means that it is designed to protect your face and not your eyes. Sometimes these shields are mesh, sometimes they're full plastic shields, but you have to read the manufacturer's guidelines, and it'll differentiate whether it's eye protection or face protection. And those two cannot be used interchangeably, even though they both have Z87 stamps. So that means that if you have one of those mesh face shields, you cannot use that in lieu of eye protection. You must have eye protection on. And if you want additional face protection in the use of that mesh, you can also do that. But you always have to have eye protection on as well. So make sure that you have a nice, good pair of safety glasses. I have two pairs. I always carry clear and tinted. If it's sunny out, I like to have some tinted safety glasses, or if it's cloudy out, I like to make sure that I have clear safety glasses so that I can always see well, and that they're always in good condition. They're relatively inexpensive. Throw them away if they have any defect in them, and just do yourself a favor and get a new pair. All right. Next thing I have, which isn't a necessity, but certainly to increase safety, is to be seen is to be safe. So if I'm wearing a high visibility color, and especially with something that's reflective, this is required if you're working on public right-of-ways or roadways. But if you're in the woods, it's not required, but it certainly is better to be seen, especially if you're in and along somewhere that has public access, or if there's somebody else potentially operating in and around your area. If you're wearing dark colors, like the flannel that I'm wearing, I'm going to blend in very well with the woods. And if I'm in a situation where I'm walking through and I'm blending in, somebody may not see me, and I may get hit with something. I may have a projectile launched at me inadvertently, in all kinds of situations. So to be seen is to be safe, and I do highly recommend that anytime you have the possibility to wear high visibility clothing, do that, whether you're working aloft, whether you're working on the ground, whether you're working in a public right-of-way, especially if you're working at night, and if you're working in the woods. There's no reason not to increase your visibility and increase your safety. Gloves, at least in my industry in arboriculture, when I'm using a chainsaw, are not required. But in an earlier video, we talked about ergonomics, or the amount of energy we have to expel to do the task at hand. And if I'm using a lot of energy to grip my chainsaw, that's less energy that I'm able to use to think about what it is that I'm doing. So a good pair of gloves can offer your hands protection, especially if you're not accustomed to doing a lot of work with your bare hands. And in this particular case, these will actually provide additional grip. So if I have gloves that are giving me more grip, I have better control over the chainsaw. It takes less energy to grip that chainsaw. I like using grip style gloves when I'm using a chainsaw as opposed to a leather glove. Leather gloves offer greater protection. Leather gloves offer protection against heat, and anytime you're working with something that's going to generate heat, please do wear leather gloves only, nothing synthetic, otherwise the synthetic material can melt. But if I'm just hanging onto the handlebars of my saw, I want something that's going to offer me a better grip, so I spend less energy hanging onto the saw. Leather gloves actually cause you to expel more energy to hang onto the saw. You have to have a tighter grip so that the saw handles don't slip out of your control. So gloves are certainly an option to consider, and there's a lot of different types and varieties out there. And I'll just wanted to mention kind of the two basic types. Grip style gloves or leather style gloves, depending on what it is you're using them for. All right, let's talk some chaps here. Not all chaps are created equal. We have type A chaps and type C chaps. Type A chaps, chaps also come in trousers or pants. So we can have chaps that are either on the exterior of our bottom wear, or we can have them built into our pants and or trousers. So type A just means that we have cut-resistant protection along the front of our legs, whereas type C means that we have protection that wraps around the backside of our legs in some fashion as well. This particular kind is a type C. So I have front protection, but I also have this back section that has chainsaw-resistant material in it as well. That protects the back of my calf, another area that could likely get struck by the saw. The material that's in these and the amount of it certainly varies based on manufacturer. In Europe, they do a really good job of marking the speed rating associated with your chaps or trousers. So they can have speed ratings of 1, 2, or 3. And the higher the number, the higher the speed rating is for the chaps. In US chaps, they need to be UL listed as well as having an ASTM mark, which means that they've been tested and rated to a minimum standard. That standard, I'll let you know whether you're using the European standard or whether you're using the ASTM standard. The speed at which chaps are rated for is far less than the speed of the chainsaw. If you've watched the previous videos, I've talked about the chain speed of most chainsaws being around 70 miles an hour. Razor blades operating at 70 miles an hour. The chaps are not going to be rated or tested for anything near 70 miles an hour. Why would that be? Because there's a trade-off with the amount of weight versus the amount of protection. And the idea that when or if we ever have a chainsaw encounter our legs protected by chap material, in general, we're not full on the throttle, and we're not full on the throttle through our leg, right? So we don't need chaps that are overly burdensome, overly hot, and overly heavy to protect up to 70 miles an hour, because when we're using a chainsaw, the accidental interaction with our leg in general is going to be when the trigger is released and it's lowering its speed as it interacts the chap. And chaps are not designed to eliminate all damage. Chaps are designed to reduce the damage caused by the chainsaw, and we'll talk a little bit about the potential damage in another safety video that we'll have. But I also want to talk about the fit and the form of these. If any of your PPE doesn't fit or any of your PPE isn't comfortable, you're not going to wear it and is potentially not going to protect you. In chaps specifically, not so much trousers or pants, and I really like pants because they're always on, they're always protecting you whether you're using a chainsaw or not. That is great, but with chaps especially, you are going to decrease the likelihood of its effectiveness if they're not worn properly. So on this leg, I have my chaps and all these buckles and straps tightened up. And on this side, I have a loose leg. Now, I'm technically wearing chaps on this side, so I've checked the box for safety. But if the saw interacts with my pants on this side, these buckles that are appropriately tightened are going to prevent this from shifting off to the side. Again, if you watch those previous videos about the reactive forces, it's going to, if the saw interacts with these chaps, try to rotate my chaps. And with this, if it's loose, it'll have no problem rotating all the way over to where that no longer have any of that chap protection, and now I'm chained into leg and having a rough day. So it matters that you're wearing chaps, and it matters more that your chaps are actually properly fitted. So please do take the time with all these buckles and these straps and make sure that you tighten them down. They'll still be comfortable, but it's going to prevent that ability for these chaps to roll out of the way and not protect yourself from that saw. Footwear is the last thing that I want to talk about. Closed toe, at very least, shoes. Now, in my industry as an arborist, there is no requirement other than what your employer requires, and that your shoes give you stability. So they have to be sturdy in some fashion, generally with some level of ankle support. That being said, steel toe is not required. Composite toe is not required. It's all about what you like and what is comfortable. Think about what works for you, and think about the different situations that you could potentially put yourself in that a certain boot would be advantageous or not. I have boots with chainsaw protection. I have boots that are just leather. I have boots that have composite toe. I have boots with steel toe. And I have boots that are waterproof all the way up to the top, and I have boots that are semi-waterproof. Every boot has a different purpose, but find the one that's going to best protect you and best suit your needs while being comfortable, and that is the boot that you should wear in that particular situation. Nothing wrong with having a bunch of different types of boots, because there's a bunch of different situations that you're probably going to find yourself in throughout your tree cutting and felling career. So that is the basics of personal protective equipment. Hey, if you like these videos and you found something interesting or learned something today, make sure you like and subscribe and continue watching this series. There's a lot of really good videos on here on how to become better. Maybe you're already skilled in tree felling or arboriculture, but it never hurts to hear another person's perspective and learn a little something along the way. So again, if you like what you're watching, like and subscribe, and keep on to the next series. See you next time.